Hi everyone, I'm Sibabatso and I'm part of the Morebo team. I'll be interviewing Ashley Horwitz today. Ashley, please tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Morning, Sir Batson. Thank you. I'm Ashley Horwitz. I'm the Managing Director of Morebo Wealth and Advisory, and I am also one of the Executive Financial Planners here. So besides worrying about the overall health of the business, I'm worried about the overall well-being of my clients and their financial future.
In your opinion, what is Morebo's future?
You know, we're living in an interesting age, and there's a lot of things going on, both from a technological perspective, a legislative perspective. So when we think about Morebo and we think about the talent that's in the business, in order to attract both top talent as well as top tier clientele, we understand that the future of our business is effectively going to be a platform style business that would be able to aggregate our clients' wealth products across multiple service providers and give them real-time data and value out of the tools that we use from a financial advisory perspective. At the end of the day, we know the value of financial advice and we know the value of a financial advisor, but it's equally important to make sure that you're giving your clients a holistic view. So looking into the future, we see a Morebo that is fully digitally enabled, that is fully enabled to aggregate data from multiple providers, and most importantly is able to give clients a holistic experience of their wealth.
Thank you, Ashley. What are you looking forward to in 2025?
You know, as a business, we've been looking quite hard at how we're going to attract top talent into our business. Equally, we're also looking at ways to create more interest for our clientele. Looking at our advisory toolkit, the product, the services that we offer to our clients, and we've been working quite hard in the background over the last quarter to make sure that we can bring these tools to market. So from that perspective, I'm quite looking forward to the fruits of our labor coming forward. I'm also quite excited if I look at the geopolitical environment and all the noise that's out there. If you actually start cutting through it and you look at the data that you're seeing coming both from South Africa and around the world, it looks like overall things are actually looking up. From a South African perspective, we're seeing unemployment come down. Globally, we're seeing tensions easing with a lot of these wars that are going on. And I think overall, when we look back at 2025, it's actually going to be a year that we can say was quite a good year. So I'm quite looking forward to that.
Okay. And what developments are you keeping an eye on in 2025?
Definitely the geopolitical situation, looking at what's happening with the US politics, the Europeans, and obviously what's happening around Asia and Eurasia. Domestically, I think that we've got a very interesting time for our government, and hopefully that these things start to come fruition, that the optimism can come through. So it's really a trend of what's happening from a geopolitical perspective, because that is going to directly affect the economic perspective.
What would your advice be to your younger self?
Thinking about my younger self and all the things that I worried about at that time, I guess the first piece of advice that I would have to say is don't worry so much. Things have a way of working themselves out. But from a financial advisory perspective, I think the discipline of saving 40 to 50% of your after-tax income is something that I'd want to instill in my future self. You know, it's something that we can't actually always do. I always say it's like when you're doing a sport or something along those lines. You get told what the end product is supposed to look like, and you aspire to get there. Yeah. You aspire to achieve that yoga movement. You aspire to get that golf swing right. And you know where you want to end up. So if anything, I tell my younger self, aspire to continuously save 40 to 50% of your after-tax income.
What does a financial advisor do, and why is their role so important in today's fast-changing world?
Thank you. That's a very good question. Look, at the end of the day, a financial advisor obviously is a qualified expert in both financial planning, cash flow management, estate planning, and investment management. These are things that we get qualified, we learn, and we become experts in the field. But most importantly, with all the other content that is available out there, I think in today's day and age, the most valuable thing a financial advisor can bring to their client is the ability to cut through the noise, and most importantly, keep a financial plan on track, it's so easy for us to get distracted by all the shiny things that are out there and all the things that are there to distract us. But in reality, it's just making sure that once that plan is put in place, we can go with the ebbs and flows and we can just keep adjusting our path to get to where we need to go. And that is the real value that I think a financial planner brings to their clients.
Thank you, Ashley. With the rise of AI, what sets human advisors apart from AI?
Yeah. Look, this is a question that I think's been plaguing the financial services sector since digitization, never mind this new wave of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
But artificial intelligence is an amazing tool and it's going to enhance our lives tenfold. It really is something that's going to bring a new age for all of us. But the reality is that it can only give us the data that reinforces what we want to know and reinforces in some way our own biases. So as a tool, it's there to assist with the information that you require. But the human factor is always going to come into play to help cut through that noise and really just give the focus to what is relevant and what doesn't actually make any sense to an individual's particular plan. Because at the end of the day, these things can only give you generic information based on a data set. And if we were all just sitting in a common data set, we wouldn't really be individuals.
Yeah.
So I think the human factor is about that individual factor, and that's really what it comes down to.
Okay. What are the most common financial mistakes people make and how can they avoid them?
Well, I think the first one is obviously getting absorbed too much in debt. Unfortunately, the way that our economies are set up and the way that business is set up, it is very easy to fall into the debt trap. And that's across the board. It's just so easy to have those high limits on your credit cards or get your overdrafts or take out your store accounts. And then the behavior comes to the point where you've now got all of this debt. So instead of trying to cover it with your cash flow, your monthly income, you're now eating into capital. So if anything, I think the biggest two traps are not being able to avoid debt and using your capital to fund your lifestyle. It's very, very easy for us to live well above our means, and it's important to always just focus, again, on keeping your lifestyle and your wants within a really reasonable ratio to what you're earning.
How do you tailor financial advice to meet the unique needs of each client?
Yeah, I think that's where the fundamentals of fact finding comes into play, because each client is unique and each client requires very different forms of financial planning. Yes, there's always the standard tick box of a financial needs analysis and the like, but each individual requires different savings requirements, different cash requirements, different estate planning requirements. Their children's lives and the paths that they're going to follow is fundamentally different. So it's really to spend that time understanding the client's needs and then using the various tools in your toolbox to put together a plan that meets their expectations. So if anything, I would say the most important part of crafting that plan is to listen, and to listen carefully to what's both being said and what's not being said.
Okay. Why is succession planning crucial for small business owners?
This is a question that I often get, and it's often something that's very difficult for business owners to deal with. Any business, whether you're a film director, whether you're a restaurateur, whether you're a one-man accounting firm, at the end of the day, you're investing your time, effort, and money in this business. And if you don't have something to show for it at the end, if you can't sell it at the end, then the value of it is not there. You should have just stayed working in a job for an employer. So building that succession plan means that you're building something of value that you're able to leave behind and at least materialize either when you retire or you pass away for an asset that you can use. So it's very important.
Okay. When should they start the succession planning process?
In my view, a succession planning process starts from the day you conceive the business. It should be a fundamental part of that SWOT analysis that you do as to how you're going to execute your business, what are the risks, what are the opportunities, that should be there as a building block from day one.
What key financial strategies should business owners consider to ensure a smooth transition to a new owner or the next generation in line to take over?
So, first and foremost, I think the most important thing, particularly for people who have family-run businesses, is nothing comes for free. It doesn't matter if your children are going to be taking over the business. There always needs to be value attached to what you're leaving behind. And the key to a good succession strategy is to ensure that the clientele or the customer base of the business knows that it does not exist based on a single personality. So it's a matter of getting your next tier management in place, making sure that the customers know who they are and what they do and what role they fill within the business, and then working out ways to phase yourself out of the business over time.
Okay. And what is estate planning and why is it important to everyone and not just the wealthy?
I mean, estate planning is effectively exactly what it says. It's planning what happens to your estate, your assets, your worldly possessions, should you pass away. And why it's relevant to everybody is because it deals with everything, both from physical assets, but also to your children, your minor children, how they should be looked after, what it is that they need and what your wishes are for them. How your assets should be split is just one aspect of a comprehensive estate plan. Also, by putting in place an estate plan, you're able to put in place mechanisms to create liquidity for assets that you might not have at the moment. So it's essential for everybody, anybody who owns a single property or has children or anything like that, to look at estate planning as a fundamental part of their overall financial plan.
What key documents should be included in a solid estate plan?
Well, that's a very interesting and good question, because the concept of a death file is something that we often talk about with our clients. So effectively, it should be a bundle of documents that your family members know where to find if something were to happen to you. Included in that should obviously be an original signed copy of your will, any documentation relating to trusts or companies to which you are a shareholder or director, looking at things such as your insurance policies, having a schedule of all policies, investments, bank accounts, the values of these accounts. These are all fundamental parts of the documentation you should have on hand and available to your beneficiaries should you pass away.
How can someone ensure their assets are distributed according to their wishes?
Quite simply, you've got to draft your will, you've got to look at the beneficiaries on your life insurance policies and retirement funds, and you've got to make sure that over and above these legislative documents, you've drafted a very strongly worded statement of wishes, which instructs your executors to how you actually want these things distributed. But contracting is key. Your will needs to speak to what your wishes are, and you need to make sure that it's drafted correctly.
Okay. How does estate planning differ for business owners versus individuals?
Fundamentally, I don't really think that it differs that much. Obviously, business owners have other complex assets that an individual who doesn't own businesses might have, but an individual also acquires shares and bank deposits and the like over the course of their lifetime, properties and the like. So fundamentally, I don't think there's a major difference. Okay. Again, it comes down to me saying, Sebabatsu, what is it that you want? In the simplest language, tell me when you die how you want your assets to be distributed. And whatever that may be, it's about taking all of that and ensuring fundamentally that the will, any trust documents, any insurance beneficiaries, any retirement fund beneficiaries, all speak to those wants. Mm-hmm. So I don't really think that there's a fundamental difference. Yes, one might be more complex than the other, but the foundation is the same.
Okay. When is the best time to start for retirement planning?
You know, the sad thing is the day you start working is the day you should be worrying about retirement planning. Life is about putting together a plan. It's about putting together a journey. On that journey, you always find that you have detours that you're going to encounter. You get sidetracked. You might have to reduce the savings that you put in place. You might have to even divert some of those savings towards what you need at a particular point in time. But it's always good to get that retirement plan going as quickly and as early as possible. Not only from the fact that it creates the discipline, but also from the fact that there's a compounding effect to money, which really helps the earlier you save. So in essence, the sooner the better, but also it's never too late to start.
Okay. And how can individuals determine how much they need to retire comfortably?
So often when I have this conversation with clients, you know, the perception that is created in the market is that I need to retire on X% of my final salary. But if you chat to an individual, particularly somebody who is sitting at a point in their lives where they have debt, they've got young children, they might be supporting elderly parents, fundamentally, what I would say to them is take all of those expenses out. Let's reduce those expenses from what you're spending a month and figure out what you actually cost. So it's about understanding fundamentally what an individual actually costs without all the additional financial obligations they have while they're still young. And that's the number that we look for. That's the number, that's the sweet spot for an individual when it comes to planning for retirement.
What are the biggest risks to retirement savings?
I think the biggest risk to retirement savings is obviously, first and foremost, not saving enough. Also, I feel that people don't truly understand the importance of diversification when it comes to planning their retirement savings. That mix of both the legislative vehicles, such as a retirement annuity, tax-free savings, any other voluntary investments like unit trusts, bank accounts, or the like, how those are allocated, how those are managed, and how they're going to be produced over the long term is a risk. And obviously the other is the wants of individuals to be more concerned about immediate needs than their long-term needs. And so the habits of withdrawing from savings, particularly for unnecessary things like holidays and the like, are things that put a retirement plan at risk and must always be managed. It's not that we're saying don't do it. We're just saying you need to go into these things with your eyes wide open. So if anything, I'd say the biggest risk to most people when it comes to their retirement savings is just putting their head in the sand and ignoring the fact that they need to look at their retirement plan.
Okay. And how do different investment options fit into a solid retirement plan?
Again, it goes back to my previous point, which is that ultimately your retirement funds are going to provide you with one aspect of your retirement plan, more than likely the income portion of your retirement plan. But retirement can be a very long time. It could be anywhere from 25 to 30 years plus. So you need to factor in things like purchasing a new car when you're in your mid-70s, or having to redo the kitchen, or maybe relocating at some point in time. So it's really about prioritizing various different kinds of vehicles for saving and building them up over time to factor into a holistic retirement plan.
What role does inflation play in retirement planning, and how can individuals prepare for it?
Well, it comes down to a very interesting slide that we've always used, which is, you know, the cost of a Wimpy burger in 1983 versus the cost of a Wimpy burger today. I'll let you guys go have a look at what a Wimpy burger costs today, but I can tell you that in 1983, a Wimpy burger and chips cost R2.83.
Sure.
So inflation effectively is the devaluation of our money. And so from that perspective, it's very important to figure out at what rate the value of our money is devaluing on an annual basis in order for us to work out what we actually need in the end. What is that future value that we need to acquire? So it's a fundamental. We need to understand what inflation is. We need to understand what our cost of living is going up by. So when we do those calculations as to what we need in retirement, we can understand fundamentally what that final figure needs to be. And even though it might seem like a very big number now, working it back with inflation, it's most probably not as big as you think. And again, it goes back to your earlier question about when do you start saving? As soon as possible, because of that compounding effect, because fundamentally you get your money to grow faster than inflation.
Well, thank you so much, Ashley, for your time and valuable advice. It was lovely chatting to you.
No, thank you. It was wonderful.
And I will see you guys in the next one.